My name's Piotr Gąstał. I'm a retired soft guy, and I be running panel according to dual-use technologies. So my guests are Rafał Modrzewski, CEO Iceye company. Iceye owns and operates the world's largest constellation of SAR satellites. Rather welcome. Rafał, welcome. Aleksander Szalecki. He's specializing in deep tech sector, Chief Strategy Officer for the UpTech and the Microamp company. And Philip Lockwood, Strategy and International Business Leader for Star Company, former head of the NATO Innovation Unit on the Secretary General Staff. Yes, please sit. According to the Kościuszko Institute report, in recent years, dual-use technologies have become increasingly critical for national security and economic competitiveness and technological sovereignty. Rapid advancement in areas such as artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and advanced digital systems offer transformation potential. However, they also introduce challenges. Geopolitical tension and evolving global security threats have highlighted the importance of fostering a balanced, coordinated, and forward-looking approach to dual-use innovation and deployment. So my first question is, what are really dual-use technologies? Philip.
Sure. Thank you very much for that question. So I think traditionally the government world thinks about dual use from the world of the Cold War era, where we had tremendous advancements, particularly in the United States, on technologies like the internet, which used to be known as the ARPANET, or GPS. These are technologies that were developed for the military, but then ended up being transitioned into the civilian world for commercial uses. And I think that continued on until the end of the Cold War, and sometime between kind of the late 90s, mid 2000s or so, actually the balance of innovation across the NATO alliance really changed from military defense-driven innovation to civilian-driven innovation in technologies like AI that also have an amazing application for defense. And so now it's defense pulling from the civilian world as opposed to the opposite. I think we're seeing a bit of a change up right now after the conflict in Ukraine, where once again we're starting to see tremendous waves of innovation around the world, and I think this is a region where we see quite a bit of that.
Thank you. Philip, there'll be another question for you, because you mentioned it in some article that effective deterrence demands resilient and innovative defense capabilities. We cannot win tomorrow's conflict with the system designed for yesterday's wars. Is your words? Yes. So Stark is a new defense technology company active, as you mentioned, in Ukraine and in Europe as well. So tell us more about Stark.
Sure, thank you.
And additional question there be, what is Diana?
And what is Diana? Couple of questions there. So I think what we're seeing today and what the conflict in Ukraine has shown is historically we've had large programs in the military for systems that have tons and tons of requirements built into them, and we try to build the most exquisite system that is capable of doing every single possible job out there. The problem is we end up having long cost overruns. We don't have a very agile approach to hardware development or software development in the military, and so you have programs that go on for 8, 9, 10 years, often with cost overruns, etc. I think what we're seeing in the dual-use context today, and this is where a company like Stark comes in, is an inspiration from the fast evolution that happens when you take operators and you take extraordinary innovators and technologists, put them in the same room and say, we have time pressures and we have crunches, fix this problem. We're not going to tell you what we necessarily need. We're going to tell you the problem we're facing, let the innovators come up with these challenges and come up with solutions, and then we're going to iterate on that, whether it's in an exercise or whether it's on the battlefield. And so for Stark as a company, we were actually born when Ukraine approached a number of great engineers in our headquarters in Germany and in Ukraine and asked us to start to produce some really sophisticated autonomous systems. And so we pretty quickly, within just a few months, started deploying those systems in prototype form in Ukraine, and we've been rapidly innovating on that on a basically weekly basis. And that's how we're able to field a capability in basically 9 months period of time. Shifting over to Diana, just really quickly, when I was at NATO, my team was responsible for establishing the Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic. And it goes back to this idea of what happens if we can bring operators from across NATO, from across the ministries of defense and armed forces, and combine them with the best and brightest of talent, often from the commercial dual-use civilian world, and get them to co-design. And so it's a network of sites for young, innovative companies that are potentially interested in supporting defense missions. We put them through an accelerator program and give them non-dilutive funding. And then we have a network of test centers and opportunities for them to do co-development with military operators.
Thank you. Rafał, since the outbreak of a full-scale war in Ukraine, I have had rumors about information support for Ukrainians via satellite systems, which was supposed to, among other things, inform about fires in various places on the globe. What does Iceye do, and how does this affect the operations of Ukrainian troops?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. It's actually excellent to speak on this panel with these panelists. We all know each other, so I think we are going to run off each other a little bit. So, look, what does Iceye do? We design satellites, we manufacture satellites, then we buy slots on rockets, we launch those satellites into space. We have launched so far 48 satellites, and they are designed for a very particular purpose. They are supposed to tell us what is happening on our planet, which means Earth observation. How we do it? We're able to take images with those satellites, and on those images we see things. We see things move, we see things change. Now, the satellites that we deploy are unusual. Most of the time when you think of satellites taking pictures, you're probably imagining a regular optical camera, the type of pictures that we are used to. We use what's called a radar imaging technology. It means we use radio waves. We send those radio waves the same way as any radar does. Those radio waves bounce back from the ground. We record that, and we create an image, but we use our own light in a way. And that means that we are allowed to see through clouds, and we can see at night. We can also see during the day. Don't worry about this. It doesn't have to be dark for us to see, but we can see at any time. Now, since we've deployed so many of those satellites, it means that any of our satellites at any given point in time is actually quite close to a target that you would like to see. So imagine your hometown, wherever that is. If it's Katowice, where I come from, that's excellent. And one of our satellites is going to be probably over that place within 1 hour. So if you want to take a picture right now, if you tell me where that is, we will send a command to the satellite. Within 1 hour, one of the satellites is going to be there. And regardless of weather conditions or time of day, we are going to take a picture and tell you everything that's happening. And the resolution with which we can do it is quite astounding, because it's 25 centimeters. So you can see really detailed information about what's happening on the ground. Now, that's a great example of a dual-use technology. We can either use this to track floods and tell you which houses have been flooded. We've used it to track fires, but we are also using it to track movements of armed vehicles or large movements of troops, of enemy forces when we are trying to defend either Ukraine or Poland. And what has been going on for the last several years is indeed we have been using the fleet of our satellites to provide intelligence information to the Ukrainian intelligence office, and they've been using that information to effectively plan and execute their war effort. And I think what Philip was mentioning is, I mean, in the words that you've cited, you cannot anymore try to wage the 21st century war with the warfare that was built for the 20th century. The technology has shifted massively over the last several decades since we've actually been building it for warfare. And I think, Andrew and Palmer Lackey are probably in leading forefront of this, and he said, look, there is more innovation and automation in your Roomba, which is the vacuum cleaner which runs around your floor, than in a modern arms. And that's true. We haven't been taking advantage of the technological progress, and we've got to shift quickly away from that. We've got to embrace what the commercial industry has done if we want to be able to defend ourselves in the future.
Thank you. Next question is, how did you start this company?
Yeah, so we actually did start it as many dual-use technology companies start. We were building small satellites at the university. Back when I was at the university, which wasn't that long time ago, we were part of what's called the CubeSat project. We were building satellites which are less than 10 kilograms in total mass, and we were launching them in space. It was actually a common thing that people at the universities were doing. We were one of those teams. It was a bit of a time when people were excited about the idea of building satellites that are smaller and cheaper and built by university students rather than huge enterprises. And as we were doing so, we thought that this technological advancement that we have just witnessed and helped to be part of. It's actually something extraordinary. We can now build satellites which can do similar things as their big counterparts, but those satellites are 10, sometimes 100 times cheaper. And you can build them not in years, but in months, sometimes even in weeks. Today we build a satellite every 2 weeks in our factory. And that was transformational because if you think about it, in a technology world, whenever something changes by an order of magnitude, whenever something changes by a 10x, it means that there's going to be a transformational change in the way we're using it. You can think about the internet bandwidth or anything that you've been using, but when something changes by 10x, it actually means that something is going to change. And we said, okay, if that's the case, then we are going to start a company that launches a lot of satellites, and hopefully we're going to find people that are going to pay for the data that we will collect. We started with ice monitoring. We actually had a first customer. ExxonMobil was our first customer. But as the world has changed and the geopolitical situation has evolved, we had to adopt as well. And I think that's true about many companies that are built today. You have to stay agile to stay on top. We evolved and we took advantage of the second side of the dual-use technology. So instead of focusing on climate change, we went on to support the needs of defense and security of allied nations. And that's how we end up where we are.
Intelligence drives operations, and for me as a former special forces guy, it's important to have a real info almost in the same time, yeah? Aleksander, the companies you represent are at the different levels. Cryotech has matured, ATP Tech has millions in revenue, and Microamp is a startup. What challenges did you face at the different stages of development of these companies?
Well, yeah, that's true. Cryotech now is a big listed company. Uptech, I would say, it's a scale-up with global operations, but still fairly small company, but growing stable with profit. And Microamp, it's a maverick. Like, you know, we don't know where it's going to be. It can be a unicorn, it can be a failure, but we're hoping for the best. But definitely, there are more and more initiatives in Poland regarding financing of those kind of companies. With Microamp, we're participant of NATO Diana, which is a great program. We really like it. But I would say that in Poland, still the biggest problem for deep tech companies is financing. I would say there is very, very few VC funds who actually understand deep tech companies. And because of that, it's very hard to actually start company. We spoke with Rafał today that in Poland it would be significantly harder for him to start what he achieved. And it is still a problem. We're talking about it, everyone knows about it, but still things are changing too slow. Because dual-use technologies are there. Dual-use technologies making actual difference on the battlefield right now.
Okay. Philip, European defense industry cannot keep up with the technological solutions of the battlefield environment, and it is not agile and resourceful as small companies. The last year of the war in Ukraine has been a kind of startup war. Your company, Stark, talks about the concept of affordable mass. What does this mean?
So I think the idea of affordable mass stems to something that we were thinking about quite a bit at NATO, which is this idea of industrial deterrence. Where Europe currently stands is at a period of threat that it has not seen since, if not the end of the Cold War, potentially even World War II, with a massive war that's raging on our eastern flank. It is absolutely critical in the war of today to think about the economic attrition that occurs within conflict. When you have state-on-state competition and state-on-state conflict, that means that the capabilities, the defense products that you're using are going to be destroyed, and you need to be able to replace them quickly and rapidly. And we cannot afford to take 5-6 years to replace a single fighter plane and manufacture that when you have combat that's going on quickly. And so there's this idea of industrial deterrence, which means the entity or the country or the alliance that is able to build technologies more quickly, build military capabilities the most quickly, and to get that out to their soldiers as fast as possible is going to have a significant competitive edge in the battlefield. And so What we're thinking about now today is this idea of how to build extraordinary capabilities using amazing modern innovation and commercially available technological products to manufacture them as quickly as we possibly can and to design for that so that we can get massive, massive amounts of drones of different types or sorts, or counter-drone systems, or rockets, or this or that, to be prepared to fight. And if we can re-leverage our industrial capacity, if we can have a supply chain that is resilient and redundant where we're not relying on our adversaries to make batteries or motors or propellers for us, but we can actually do that, and we have redundancy built in that system, we can quickly get that to manufacturing facilities, and we can build, in a factory, 100 drones, 1,000 drones, whatever it is, a week, a month. And we can do that faster than potential adversaries, like Russia in this case, then that is deterrence because they will think twice if they know, hey, if we do this, we're going to have 100,000 drones on our footstep ready to go. And even if we shoot those down, there's another 100,000 that's going to be ready to go 1 month later.
Amazing. Rafał, I have watched with hope your attempts to reach the Polish MOD for many years. To provide reconnaissance services for the Polish army. A few days ago, I read information that Rheinmetall bought 60% of shares in Iceye. Today, I read news that you signed a contract. Finally, you signed a contract with Polish MOD. Big one. What barriers does the introduction of dual-use technology to the Polish military encounter?
Yes, thank you very much for this question. I think maybe I will try to comment on the Rheinmetall news first, because there is some amount of confusion around this news, which I think needs to be explained. Rheinmetall has not bought 60% of Iceye. This is not true. Actually, Rheinmetall has not bought any percent of Iceye at this particular transaction. What has, however, happened is Rheinmetall and Iceye came together in order to jointly establish a third company, a joint venture, which is going to be a Rheinmetall Iceye joint venture, and that's a new company dependent on both of those mother companies. And that company has a dedicated purpose, and it's going to be manufacturing satellites based on Iceye designs in Germany in order to serve the German market. So that's what happened. So we are still independent, and we love our friends at Rheinmetall, but they are not the owners of Iceye. So maybe that just clears that out. Indeed, we have signed today a contract with the Polish Ministry of Defense, and I'm super pleased that it has finally happened. I think over the last several years, I have watched this with hope and maybe certain level of frustration. It still takes a while for us to get there and to execute those contracts. Although I do have to say that at the end of this journey, there was actually quite a lot of positive push coming from all directions, both from the ministry, from the army, from the armament agency, and we have been able to at least get through negotiations phase relatively quickly, although it took 6 months. But I can tell you that there has been many people from the public administration side even that were staying with us till 1 a.m. in the night and actually trying to draft the papers. It was at the end of the day over 1,000 pages, so it must have taken a while, but yes, it was several years to get there. I think it's hopeful for the future for our startups, because as we were saying over here, the investment still is lacking when it comes to deep tech startups. And I think the investment always follows big anchor contracts. So I really hope that the MOD is going to learn from this experience and actually start engaging with startups even more frequently, because that's what we actually need to do in order to tap into the agility of the industry that we are talking about. And as those contracts are issued, I think the investment will follow.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you for such a hot, let's say, discussion. It was amazing, and I think that dual-use technologies right now are a hot space for investment. So just buy shares, whatever. Thank you. Thank you very much.